Moving into 11.1, inference for two-way tables. And we're going to look at some more chi-squared tests. So just remember, 11.1 we just finished. Data has to be categorical. We're looking at the proportions between the categories. There are no confidence intervals in these, and all tests are only one-sided because of that one tail, so we don't have to worry about those things. So that makes our lives a little bit easier. We focused on comparing one list or group, but now we're going to move on to two tests, two groups, maybe even sometimes three test groups when we get into one of these types. So our tests are the chi-square test for homogeneity. I know that's a weird word. Homogeneity just means the same. Chi-squared test for independence. So we'll find out what that one is in a moment. Let's focus on homogeneity. Just like before, it is a little more difficult to write these in symbols, especially when we get into these two-way tables. You'll see why. So we just say the null hypothesis is the proportion is the same for each group, or the proportion is different among the groups. So we're just looking, everything's the same or everything's different. Random, stated, or somehow assumed. 10% or independent sample size is less than 10%. We're used to that. Same thing, large counts, expected counts of each cell is greater than 5. So nothing new so far. And then we can go ahead and proceed with chi-squared model for a chi-squared test for homogeneity. Kind of seems duplicated there, but okay. This one is a little bit different. We're going to figure out the expected count. We're going to look at a problem here and some problems in class. You take the row total times the column total divided by the whole total of the table. That'll give you the expected count of each cell. So until we do this, it won't really make sense. Degrees of freedom now are the number of rows minus 1 times the number of columns minus 1. So for example, if we have a two-way table where we've got 3 columns here and 2 rows across, then my degrees of freedom for a table like this would be 3 minus 2, or sorry, 3 minus 1, which is 2, and then 2 minus 1, which is 1. So my degrees of freedom for this table is only 2. You'll get used to it as we go on. Next, we're already familiar with that chi-squared formula. So the sum of all the cells observed minus expected squared divided by expected. We've already done that. You can look up the p-value either on a table or a calculator. So once we've got that chi-squared, we could use the chi-squared CDF, or we can just look it up on table C. Since the p-value is so small, we're going to reject, or since this p-value is so large, we fail to reject. Remember, this second part is always about the alternative, whether we can, let's see, oh, sorry, this one, they kind of reversed. We usually talk about fail to reject first. So yeah, there is evidence to suggest the alternative is true, or it's so large we failed to reject, so there's not evidence to suggest that it's true. Now that we've gone through the basics, let's go ahead and look at a problem. You might have heard that some people say that drinking cranberry juice prevents urinary tract infections in women. So if you're not a woman, you may never have ever heard that, but if you are, you probably have. I think it's sometimes said true for men too, but just saying. But in 2001, there was actually a report where they tried it out. So 3 groups of women monitored for infections over 6 months. One group drank cranberry juice, another drank a lactobacillus drink, excuse me, and the third didn't do anything, so control group. The group, control group, 18 women developed 1 infection compared with 20 of those who consumed the lactobacillus, and only 8 drank the cranberry juice. So does this study provide evidence that the cranberry, for the value of cranberry juice in warding off the infections? So basically, if there's no evidence, then they should have all gotten the infections at the same rate. So basically, the proportion of urinary tract infection is the same for each group, or it was different. You can see that they went through our checks in the plan. So, although not specifically stated, we can assume the women are randomly assigned to treatments. 10% sample is less than 10% of the population. There were 50 women in each of the groups, so 150. We can assume the population of Finnish women is greater than 1,500, so we should be good there. Expected cell frequency condition. I'm going to go through how they got these numbers, but they went ahead and put in the expected values. But here were the observed. So those drinking cranberry, only 8 got urinary tract infections. These ones got no infections, 20 to 30, 18 to 32. So what would we expect, all right, in each of those cells? Let's see how they calculated the expected value for this cell right here. So it would be I did bring back the formula from the previous page, row total times column total times table total. For this cell right here, if I take the row total, I'd be taking the 8, the 20, and the 18. That ends up being 46. My column total is 50. We know that actually all of these are 50. And that's the reason why all 3 of these numbers are the same. This won't always happen, but it does in this problem since all 3 of the groups had the same amount of subjects. We also know that there were 150 total women in this group. So the way they calculated this number, and then all 3 of them actually, the row total was 46, and then that would be times the 50, and that would all be divided by 150. And that's how they got the 15.333. They did the same thing with the next row to get these 34.667. The total here in this case would be the 42 plus the 30 plus the 32, or we could just take 150 and subtract the 46. That gives us 104, which we'd multiply to the 50 and divide by the 150. And that's how they ended up with those 34.667 numbers. You can see the chi-squared formula being used, the observed value minus the expected value squared, all divided by the expected value. And you found the sum of all 6 of those to get 7.776. If we look at table C, we see our p-value is somewhere between 0.02 and 0.025. From the calculator, you could simply do a chi-squared CDF. Our lower bound is 7.776. Our upper bound is a very large number. I always wonder about this. It's always a right-tailed test, so I'm never sure why exactly they do this. Why they do this, make you put in both values, because you'll always have a large upper bound and your chi-squared numbered will always be the lower bound. They did calculate the degrees of freedom. I forgot to mention that up here. We had 2 rows, 3 columns. So just like my example on the first page, we only had a degree of freedom 2. That gave us a p-value of 0.0205. And you can see that does fall between these 2 numbers. Of course, finish with our conclusion. P-value is so low. Usually it's not that low. It's just less than 0.05. We are going to reject the null hypothesis. There's actually strong evidence to suggest there's a difference in the proportion of urinary tract infections for cranberry juice drinkers, lactobacillus drinkers, and women that drink neither of the 2 beverages. So notice the conclusion does not say that cranberry juice is better. It's just saying that one of them, that these are not all equal, and maybe we should do some further study. We'll do one more video on the chi-squared test for independence to see the difference between these two types.